and we have rentals on both sides of the border. And so we're on our boat that was 10 years in the making on the magic whiteboard, the big Y. We're here. This is it. It's pretty cool.
Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. I'm Jason Balin from Hard Money Bankers and my co-host Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse. If this is the first time tuning into the show, welcome. We certainly appreciate it. I promise you we're going to have a lot of fun. You might even learn something as well. If you're a returning viewer, follower, listener, viewer, if I missed that, thanks again for all the support. We certainly couldn't appreciate. We couldn't do it without you. We certainly appreciate it. In a second, Ian's going to bring in our guest and introduce her, but I do want to read off what she put in her little cliff notes because I think that's very intriguing. I'll be recording this podcast from our boat in Desolation Sound in British Columbia. We've been working for the last 10 years to achieve this, and we spoke a little bit before we started recording, and sure enough, she is there on her boat. So definitely looking forward to this interview, Ian.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited. And the reason we do these is because we're talking to real people doing real things, not gurus, not people who are trying to sell you a course. They're out here doing the real thing. So the best thing we can do, we don't care about the subscribes, the likes, any of that other crap. What we care about, and the best compliment we can give our guest is sharing the show. So please, guys, if you get any value out of this, share the show. That's why we do this. And with that being said, before we hop into the interview, anyone that's keeping track over on CRE-syndicate.com, I'm deep in the $50 million challenge, closed our first deal, got it 1.2 into the till, got a long way to go, got some deals in the works. A few of them look like they're going to blow up at the time of this recording. We're 55 days in. We got a half a year to go, and hopefully we can do it by December 31st. But again, enough about us, and let's bring in Dr. Jennifer, I'm going to butcher the last name because I can't say this word, Salisbury. Salisbury. I always want to say Salisbury just because, this way I don't screw it up. But either way, this might be our first doctor on the show. So, doctor, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. Love the podcast. The relatability is awesome.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. So if you just want to give everyone kind of a background, you are sitting on your boat in British Columbia. We found out that you might be our first dual citizen too. Then again, we don't ask a lot of people, but you may be our first dual citizen. And you're recording from your boat up in Northwest Canada. You just want to give everyone kind of a background in who and what you guys do?
Sure. My mom was an original programmer for the telescopes on Maui. And met this crazy Canadian. There's lots of Canadians on Maui and Hawaii in general. Met this Canadian who's a builder, housing provider, and really entrepreneurial, and fell in love, got married to the guy. A month after we got married, we had an immigration nightmare, insert problem here. And it was at the same time as the 2007, 2008, 2009 recession. So we ended up coming back up to Canada. I became a Canadian citizen. I'm US by birth. And then post recession 2015, he had wanted to finish a build in South Maui that he bought the property in 1995 to build a few houses or some condos. And we finally got the financing and got everything lined up. And so he was also able to get his days and his citizenship in the US. So we're both dual citizens. And we have rentals on both sides of the border. And so we're on our boat that was 10 years in the making on the magic whiteboard, the big Y. We're here. This is it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to dive into the journey of all this, right? Of all the real estate investing, how you got to financial freedom and things like that. When did you put that, this I'm guessing this is one of your biggest goals, or maybe even your end goal. But when did you first put that kind of on paper, or when did you kind of start, digging in to make that a reality? Like how far back?
We'll say 10 years before. So this was right when we put it on the magic whiteboard, and it was really not necessarily about financial freedom. It was about what makes us happy, what brings us joy. And so we started listing off all the things, like a good cup of coffee. I've got coffee right here. We love being in Desolation Sound. There's a particular spot with a particular tree. It's like we want to sit in Desolation Sound on our boat, drinking coffee, looking at our tree. And it was very specific. And then we went into what's the layout of the boat? What kind of boat do we want? What does it have to have? What can it not have? And then we started making a board, right? Just a vision board of what it you want to do. And is it exactly the way it was on the vision board? No, but pretty damn close. Yeah. Yeah. So about 10 years ago, it got real.
Got it. Go ahead, Ian. Sorry.
No, I mean, I think we've kind of talked about this. I recently redid my vision board and put some new stuff up there, stuff I've talked about. And I specifically remember, and my wife was telling me the other day, she's like, you really need to write down, I want. I always feel weird saying I want, but as of recent, like I've been writing down I want, because I remember when I first started, said I want to retire before the time I'm 40. And sure as shit, we retired at 39, several years later. And it's just kind of been like a reflection. And I was like, you know what? It's time to make a vision board again. It's time to start writing down what I want right now. By the time this comes out, we might be at the White Marlin Open fishing. So one of my wants was hopefully win the damn fishing tournament. But I think it's really powerful. If you guys have ever watched the movie The Secret, people think it's goofy stuff, but that stuff is real. It's very, very real.
Well, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I mean, I've read it 29 times because it reads different every single time.
Well, I like that you said magic whiteboard, because that's 100% what it is. I mean, we had, when we had a business coach and we had 10-year goals that we hit in 3 years, and they're not imaginable. It's hard to imagine them unless you're putting them on the magic whiteboard or however you want to organize and see them on a regular basis. But like for those that aren't believers, like it's true, like it works, and you're staring at something every day, and and here's the thing, like if you have a 10-year goal, the stuff you have to accomplish tomorrow is not all that big, right? It's just little stuff in order to accomplish that. And I mean, think about, because I think about this, like 10 years from now, oh man, that's so long. That's such an uphill battle. But think about where you were 10 years ago. It was yesterday.
The words on the whiteboard. So we actually have two pieces to our magic whiteboard. And we always say the same thing. Be careful what you put on your magic whiteboard, because it will come true, because you're starting to align everything for it to come to you. You're attracting it, right? That's the whole point of this. And the whole idea with this is we do a visionary side and then we do a practical side. And what that looks like is we don't necessarily say I want. We say it feels so good to be sitting in Desolation Sound on our boat, looking at our tree, drinking coffee. So it feels so good. It feels so good to pay this bill off, or it feels so good. But the other side of it is the perfect tenant for this unit that we have vacant is seeking us. And then what we do is we say, remove all the obstacles out of the way so that they can find our product that's perfect for them. And so there's a visionary side and then there's a practical side. That's how we do it. And we're always looking at it, always changing things and just going, you know what? You can't have too many things on your magic whiteboard. You just can't. But you have to be careful what you put on it.
Yeah, no, I definitely get it. Jason needs to get his internet fixed. He's having some issues. I think they're working in his office complex today, so he'll be back here in a second. So, but this is the troubles. But yeah, no, it's really, really powerful stuff. And I think something that we were talking about is like it's hard to view the future. Like people are like, oh, I want a boat. For me, it's like I want a shore house, and it's so unobtainable because of the dollar amount of the capital to be invested. But then when you look back at it and you're like, oh shit, it wasn't that bad. Like in that same 10-year time horizon, like especially with the fire department, when I quit, like writing down when I was first getting in, I'm going to retire by the time I'm 40 seemed like insane to get there. Then when I got there and looked back, I was like, oh shit, I was out of my mind that whole entire time. I have no clue how I even got to here. Like that was a wild rush. And the mind's a very, very, very powerful thing. That movie, The Secret, it's also a book. Jim Carrey talks about just writing himself a check. I think that's the one where he talks about that, and acting like what was the guy, Andy Kaufman, the comedian, and like just having the outer body experience to get that $100,000 check that he wanted. I mean, it is. Normally we talk about real estate, but this is what you need to get over the hurdle and get off the sidelines to go do it.
This is what drives it, because real estate is so hard and it's so full of awkward conversations with lenders, with your insurers, with your future tenants, with your staff. It is really hard. And if you don't have a clear vision of what you're working hard for, you really won't push through. And we knew for a long time, it's like, you know what, maybe I can't do it in this moment, but I can have that awkward conversation in 20 minutes. Let me just go and, take 5 and breathe a little bit. And then I'll make that phone call, be in the right headspace to make that phone call. And that's what real estate is. I mean, that's what business is in general, but real estate can be really hard.
Yeah. So let's move into that. Like, let's talk about doing real estate, and real estate being hard. You're operating in 2 different countries. Presumably that's super hard. I don't want to get into politics, but Canada's got its own problems. U.S. has their own problems. The rest of the world has their own problems as we're recording this in 2024, leading into an election season. On that road. It's hard enough just to do real estate in the perfect economy. How are you guys managing to do real estate in 2 different countries? And just to be clear, you're doing real estate in Hawaii, which is really offshore of U.S. mainland, and in Canada. How are you managing that?
So, we're self-managing. So I don't have a property manager, but I do have supporting staff, supporting crew on the ground in both locations that we are actively engaged with every day, pretty much. So while I'm sitting here on the boat, we have Starlink and we're talking on our phones, we're emailing, I'm doing a lending package later today for some different lending that we want to do in the States. So it's, how are we doing it? Very much engaged. That's the word I'm going to say, is that, people say real estate is passive. Nah, Ian, we've talked about this. Yep. Real estate is only passive on your tax returns. That doesn't exist. Right. And especially with no property manager. So we've got rentals here in Canada. We've got rentals in Hawaii as well. And it's difficult. It's not easy at all. And this week we did annual maintenance in Canada. So the crew went through all of the units and they're doing a big list. In fact, I got the list this morning of the follow-up maintenance of everything. And there's some refrigerators that need replaced. And, there's some stuff going on that's like, okay, we got to make some decisions and look at the budgets and make sure that we're being smart about our choices. So, but you have to be engaged.
Engaged. Real estate's a full contact sport. I don't care if you're a passive investor, an active investor, an LP, a GP, a sponsor, a debt signer, a property manager, a whatever. It is full contact. I did talk at length on your podcast in regards to that, because I think too many people take that position of, oh, it's passive, whatever, it'll be fine. Like, people ask all the time about storage. Storage is one of the most active businesses out there. I just don't have the tenant laws and the BS. And I think that's something I'd like to ask you is, because we get a lot of Canadian people that come on and are like, oh, I want to invest in US, or I invest in US because it's better. How are the Canadian laws compared to the US when it comes to renters' rights and all those other, fun?
Well, so tenancy laws, it's interesting. So it's not so much a US Canada. It's either state or provincial or territorial. So let's start right there. So the state of Hawaii is different than the state of California, is different than the state of New York, and that's different than the province of Alberta, the province of British Columbia. Everybody has their own silo of items. And what does that look like? So for example, in British Columbia, if there is a dispute between a tenant and a landlord, there's actually an arbitrator, there's a third-party arbitration that you apply to, and you explain your situation and you have an arbitration hearing. And then you get basically a ruling, and then you take that ruling to the court and the court enforces it. Okay. In the state of Hawaii and many other states, there is no third party. They might have some mediation that's required that may or may not work, but ultimately you file directly with the court. There is no arbitrator. There's none of that. You file directly with the court. And the province of Alberta is the same way. There is no third party arbitration. It's just you go right to the courthouse and you start filing. If someone doesn't pay, you're filing for non-payment eviction. Basically, you're getting, a writ of possession application is what you're doing. And then in the state of Hawaii, there isn't a whole lot of pre-made forms like leases or notices of, mischief, lease violations. But in British Columbia is the best template of every lease form I could think of. In fact, most of the time what I do, like condition inspection, I take the British Columbia version and I white out British Columbia and I use it in Hawaii because it doesn't say it has to be a Hawaii form. It just has to be written. Well, guess what? I have a template right there. So if I see on Facebook or if people are talking in the community at My Life as a Landlord, I will just say, go to British Columbia forms, and there's like 50 forms that they can use. And if you don't want to use British Columbia, wipe that part out. Big deal.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's the best way to do it. I don't want to say fake it to make it, but most of these provinces, now you got me talking like Canadian, most of these states or provinces, at least in the U.S. territory, North America, are going to act pretty similar. I am interested because Maryland is considered very liberal. Baltimore City is like uber liberal. They initiated that mediation and all this other BS to get to an eviction. What's the time process to get an eviction in Alberta or British Columbia?
So in British Columbia, it's if let's say you've got a tenant who's not paying. And so in British Columbia, you've got a 5-day, like if they don't pay on the 1st, you can give them on day 2 papers to say you have 5 days to pay in full or 10 days to get out. It's 5 to pay, 10 to get out. If they don't get out on the 11th day or whatever, you have to count your days exactly. If they're not out, then you can go and file for an arbitration hearing. The arbitration hearing, unfortunately, it's usually 60 to 90 days to even get a hearing. Then they have 30 days for their decision that will be mailed to both parties. Now, if you're counting, that's already 4.5 months, right? And they're very likely not paying this whole time. So, and then if you get a decision from the arbitrator saying, yes, you need to pay, tenant, you need to pay the landlord, then what you can do is then you have to go and file at the Supreme Court for that province, for British Columbia. And then you have a writ of possession. And then like we live in rural British Columbia here. Our rentals are in rural British Columbia. There is no bailiff here. If I need to bring a bailiff in, I have to either bring one over from Vancouver Island or fly one up from Vancouver, fly them. And then they do their thing. And what the bailiff does is they basically go up to the door and they serve the tenant, and they put the tenant and all of their items at the curb, call a locksmith, they change the locks, and then the landlord's not allowed to enter at all. And then they give you the new keys. So all of that, we're talking at least 6 months, plus the cost of the bailiff. The bailiff is they usually say $1,000 per bedroom based on the size of it, plus then the locksmith. So we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars in at least a 6-month delay. The state of New York is very similar. New York City is very similar. There's a lot of delays that are trying to give the tenant the benefit of it. But sometimes the tenants know exactly how to play this game. And so you got to know the rules and play it better.
Yeah,
that's the trick.
I would agree with that. I mean, something we did during COVID, besides lose our minds, is they had all the eviction protection money, but they weren't releasing it. But we couldn't evict. So what we just said, but you could file a tenant holdover. So what we did was we said, well, we're going to reduce everyone down to 3 and 6 month leases, mostly 6-month leases. And this way, if we get damaged, we can have someone out 30 days, and at least they had a 6-month run to try to figure their stuff out. So yeah, I think knowing the game goes a very long way. If you had to choose between Hawaii and Canada and you could allocate all your resources to one location, which place would you prefer to invest all of your capital in?
Texas.
Texas? All right. I didn't have that one on the radar. Texas is a good state. Louisiana, they got great eviction laws. Mississippi. Why Texas? I guess you've been looking into it.
Oh, we've been looking into it for a while. Both my sister and my mom live in Texas, and we've got everything set up if we wanted to invest in Texas and have for a very long time. There's been several deals that we've had in escrow, and for whatever reason, they never closed. So we've got bank accounts. We're ready to go in Texas. And so I've looked a lot at the tenancy laws in Texas. Business-friendly states, very resource rich, and I mean natural resources, but also human capital. The skill set of people in Texas, there is just someone that can do anything there. And then there's all kinds of great advisors in Texas that know Texas a lot better than me. And I think that's also part of it, is that if you're going to work remotely, like we're in Canada and British Columbia, and I just said Texas. Well, what in the world? It's because I've got great advisors in Texas. I've got great advisors in Texas. We've got an attorney, insurance agent, all of those. That is the key, is that if I don't know what to do, I've got advisors that are going to help me figure this out.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I think it's interesting as, we view more into it. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, self-storage is the best thing known to man. Or, it's like, well, yeah, but there's still state laws that you need to abide by. There's still like, the tenancy laws, the residential consumer laws are maybe not as prevalent, but there's still state laws and guidelines. And you do want to be in friendly, business-friendly states. California's trying to attack rent increases. You have other states that are starting to look at storage because some of the operators just continue to jack rates, as they should, on tenants. But it's also getting the attention of the lawmakers to say, what's going on here? And that's where you need to be in a business-friendly state, a state that people want to operate with you in. I think one thing we didn't ask you is how, or maybe we did because Jason had the technical issue. What was are you still working your W-2, and what was your original career background? And then how did you make that bridge, or was there any skill sets that bridged you into real estate that crossed over?
Lots of questions, but yes, the answer is yes. Am I still working my W-2? Yes, I am still a W-2 employee of our U.S. company, which is a licensed general contractor in Hawaii, on Maui, right where the wildfires happened. Thankfully, we did not have a loss, and we're housing providers. And so as soon as the fires happened, we were on the front lines talking with the state of Hawaii and county of Maui, saying, this is what you guys got to do. The housing crisis was already an emergency before the fires. Then it was overnight, 2,200 more homes just were lost. So we're doing that. But how my background in your neck of the woods, born in Baltimore. But I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I attended the U.S. Naval Academy there in Annapolis, Maryland, right by where you and Jay are. And but then I spent 5 years in the U.S. Navy. I was on a ship in San Diego, and I became a trained U.S. nuclear propulsion engineer. I served aboard the USS Enterprise. And so that's all about logistics. That's all about supply chain management. Along the way, I got a master's degree in engineering management, and then departed the Navy. I really wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And so I went back to school, got my MBA, and then realized that I like school. That's why I'm a doctor, but I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a doctor of education, and I studied intergenerational communication. And it allows me to adjust my communication to whomever I'm speaking with. And as a result, my husband, who's a licensed general contractor, I was able to do the business side of it. So all of the payables, all of this was for the big build in Maui that I mentioned. I was the construction manager for this. And I had people come up to me all the time going, how on earth did you actually get this project to move? Like, how did you do this? And I just said, I asked a lot of questions, and I said, educate me on the process. That was my number one question when I talk to people. Educate me on the process. Here's my problem. What do I do to move it forward? And I never lost my temper. And you can't, because if you lose your temper in real estate, you've lost. And so I just go, educate me on the process. Can I follow up with you tomorrow? What is the next action item? Do you need a phone call, a check, a letter? What is it? Like, we have to kick the can down the road. What does that look like for you? And as a result, a year ago, July 2023, we completed the project. It's now a beautiful condo development called Paradise Ridge in South Kihei, right across from Kamaole 3 Beach, that every time I drive up there, I go, holy crap, I remember when this was a field.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I think that's 100% right, is being able to communicate and who you resonate with and adjusting. I would think you would do very well with sellers. Being able to have that communication skill set. I assume there's no fights around your household because you can communicate great with your husband, right?
No.
I get yelled at all the time. You can't communicate. I'm like, I know, because I'm a hype person. But anyway, that being said, no, being able to communicate and being able to discuss the issues at hand with sellers or with contractors. Too many people are afraid and they just throw money at the issue rather than saying, and I mean, look, I do it too. As aggressive as I am, people think they're like, oh, you probably have never. No, it's like, dude, sometimes I cower down too, because the conversations are hard and you don't want to make someone upset. But in the same sense, if they promised you to do X, Y, and Z from a work standpoint, then like you need to have them make sure they execute in that fashion. And most people aren't willing to have that hard conversation to get them and communicate with them properly to say, look, you're not a bad person. I just think you need to execute your contract. And that's very hard for most people to get through because it gets very emotional and then it gets tied to money, right?
But that's where I always coach people, even through my own podcast, where I just say, look, how do you get through awkward conversations? Speak in facts. Here's what your lease says. Here's what your scope of work says, contractor. This is what you said you were going to do. This is the timeline. Here's your pay schedule. You haven't delivered on the timeline, or you're over. Let's see why you're over and move forward. But you have to speak in facts. If you can speak in facts, it takes the emotion out of it. Not that I'm a heartless person, because I'm not. But when you speak in facts, you're really coming from a place of power. It's like you're really understanding the rules of the game, the tenancy laws. The tenancy law says this. Recently I had a tenant who was departing say, well, these are your rules. I said, no. I said, you're missing. That's not my rules. That's the state of Hawaii's rules. And here's the part that it says that. That's not Jen's rules.
Yeah. My rules would be way worse. I just want to let you know, right? But I'm willing to, and this is the point that people miss, is they want us to talk in matter of fact, which I agree with 1000%. But then that's where people lose the emotion side that you do need. You do need to be caring and empathetic towards the other party that's involved. Hey man, contract says X, Y, and Z. However, I understand you run a business. I can allocate a few more dollars, but I need this done the way you specified it. It's going to cost you money, but it's also going to cost me money too. And that's why we've always dealt well, because people are always amazed how we got stuff, but we understood contractors. What's their motive? They want to get paid every Friday. They want to submit an invoice, have money for to drink beers, have some food, buy cigarettes, whatever it is. They're living paycheck to paycheck, even though they have their own company, right? And I think that's the one piece that people miss. And I don't know your experience on that, is not having talking in matter of fact, but then forgetting the empathy part.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that got us through our big build that we just completed was when we hired a subcontractor, I told them, I said, look, to get your paycheck, I need the invoice. I need it to be this certain way. And, detailed the whole nine with the notarized lien release. Because of the loan, you had to do all of this. And I said, but as soon as you give that to me, I will hand you a check right then that you can then take directly to the bank. So it wasn't even for Friday. It was usually within 24 hours, or my bookkeeper would meet them or whatever. But it was always, and I was consistent. I never delayed, ever. And we still do that with all our rentals in Canada. If we have an emergency call, we had an emergency call with an electrician the other day. And I said, send me the invoice. I will pay you immediately, because that is the speed of response. If they have to wait for payment, that's a good way to lose a relationship, and they'll just ghost you. And that's fine.
Yep. And I think that's where people lose. It falls apart for them, right? Because they're like, oh, well, I just paid them, right? But now they let that electrical contractor come back next time, and they want to get paid up front for the normal work that they were already doing. It's like, no, that was special case. There's boundaries here. And sometimes you might need different contractors to do different things. So you don't need to deal with that in real time. And again, you need to know, I talked about this. We talked about this at length, is like your personality type. Can you handle these types of things? Can you
Right.
navigate that? So
It's hard.
It's very, very hard. And too many people are afraid to do what it takes to get through the hard conversations. It sucks.
Yep.
It does. It sucks.
Yep.
Like, we have problems in our commercial real estate portfolio. We have problems in our single family portfolio. All the conversations are different. And it just, some days they're great. Other days they're bad, and it happens, and so be it. So, yeah, no, this has been great. So I guess, you said you did this condo project.
Mhm.
Did you guys sell that off, or did you retain them as rentals?
So no, we've sold them off. We actually have 4 units still available for sale, and which is really sad because we're a year out from completing it. We've held these 4 rentals. One is a show home that's been furnished, and it's really sad because the market in Hawaii has gotten so volatile with the interest rates, the insurances now. And there's a lot of insurers, since not just the fires, but all of the disasters that happened in 2023, they're non-renewing, they're upping all of the homeowners association, or for my Canadian friends, the strata fees. They're just jacking them up, doing tons of special assessments. And so what's happening is you have these units that are getting dumped on the market to just fire sale them because people can't afford to keep them. So they've got these relatively inexpensive condos, even though they have special assessments and, you know, different things, versus our brand new condos. And so we're competing in a market that we couldn't have even imagined a year ago. And so I wish that we had been able to sell them, but it didn't happen. We're still holding on to them. So
Yeah, no, and that's true with insurance, and everything's a mess. You know, we're recording this in the summer of 2024, and a lot of crazy shit's happened in the political realm, the financial realm. I'm interested to see what the Fed says. But, you know, just talking to our insurance agent, he said insurers are pulling out of habitational all the time. It's getting harder and harder. They only want to insure the new stuff. But, you know, we live in the Northeast. You can't do that. You know what I mean? And we see the wind problems in the commercial real estate down in the middle of the country and the coastline. I'm assuming Hawaii has similar type issues when it comes to wind and insurance, and now the wildfires. And, you know, it's going to be crazy over the next several months. I hope not to say years, but
it probably will be. Yeah.
Yeah. I can only get so much gray hair. I can't lose any more hair. So, but it is what it is. You know, I think it goes back to what you were saying about being a good operator, being a good listener, executing on the facts, and knowing the rules. You know, when was the last time, and this is a question to the audience, is like, this is rhetorical for you guys, but when was the last time you read your lease? You know, I'm not saying I read it all the time, but I know Raquel's in it all the time. And when she needs to execute something, she knows the bullet points to say, hey, tenant, in the lease under section X, Y, and Z, this is what's going on. How are we resolving this matter? You know, so
same thing. What about the tenancy laws, or the laws that are applicable to whatever business model, like your self-storage? If you read that, it's amazing. You get enlightened just by reading it again. Even though those are the rules that you live by, you read them again going, oh, I completely forgot that was in there.
Yep, 100%. So what does the future hold for you guys? You say over the next 5 to 10 years?
Both in the U.S., in Hawaii, and in Canada, we had been searching for 5 to 10 acre parcels to do tiny home communities. You know, Mike and I, we both believe very strongly in creating communities and then living in them. And that's what we've done in both locations that we live in. So recently we bought 5 acres in British Columbia that we're building out, we're developing to a 48 lot RV park that will have housing rental pads that people can bring tiny homes. We offer tiny homes as well. And we are hoping to do something similar in Maui, a little more difficult with all of the state and county requirements, let's say, bureaucracy. But since the wildfires, there's been a lot more adaptation because there is just simply not enough housing. So in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see Mike and Jen Salisbury make more housing on both sides of the border. I'm also gearing up to become a professional speaker for real estate investors to become much more cash management savvy. And I'm enjoying working on that process. So I'll probably start speaking on this workshop in 2025. And I can continue to do that. I mean, the float planes pick me up literally outside in the channel. I could fly from my boat to any point on the globe right here and come back to the boat and keep going. So that's the plan, is to stay on the boat and keep working it, keep being engaged.
That's absolutely awesome. I look forward to following your journey. While you're out on the boat, we ask all of our guests, what's one podcast or book that you're reading when you guys are out on the water, or you think everybody should read or go check out?
Well, I naturally have to say my own podcast, My Life as a Landlord, is my podcast. I follow several others, including yours, Real Estate Reserve. Love listening to you guys. And books. Recently, I reread Too Big to Fail, and Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time is phenomenal. And he's Canadian from British Columbia, which we love.
Yep. Yeah, no, his book is good. It forced me to hire an assistant. Yep. It forced me to hire an underwriter. It forced me to think about how to make our investment business autonomous and grow. I think it's one of the most powerful books when you're ready for it. Mm-hmm. I think if you read it early, if you're mature enough to handle it, you can do it. But I think as you grow and scale a company, it's very, very interesting. And, there's a ton of takeaways. I think it's one of the best. I read that, Who Not How, and what's the other one he just wrote, all literally simultaneously. And it was a very powerful few months for me as I was reading all those books. So yeah, I agree. Buy Back Your Time is probably top 5 books for me. It is very, very
I have
good.
It here on the boat, actually.
Yep. It is so good. I'm looking at my inbox on the other screen that is literally set up with the priorities. I gave the EA process that he has circulating around on the internet to my executive assistant to execute on, and she read it and she started doing takeaways on it, and it's been really fun. So no, that is awesome. Where is the best place people can find you on the internet? They want to learn more about what you're doing. They want to see your adventures on the waterways or anything in between.
Yeah, for sure. So the website is mylifeasalandlord.com, and we're also on YouTube, My Life as a Landlord. And we record here. I'm recording podcasts almost daily here for the weekly show. And Ian is on an upcoming show too, which is great. And I'd love to engage more with the community.
Yep. No, that's awesome. Dr. Jen, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on, guys. If you got any value out of this, it's not about us. It's not about the likes and the subscribes. As you can see, Dr. Jen absolutely dropped bombs for us. So please share the show. Let's get her out there. She wants to do her speaking career. So let's get her some notoriety, pass that around. But thank you so much. Thank you for being honest and transparent. And guys, we will catch you on the next one. Hopefully Jay is here with his internet outage, but we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.